Hello from Kensington Security Consulting, where we bring education to national security, a podcast that explores the intersection of Western and Islamic cultures. Today, we'll start with the strange case of Monica Witt, or Witt, from an all-American girl to a traitor for Iran. This is an update to a podcast I made a few months ago. So, the story goes an all-American girl joins the Air Force and becomes an intelligence analyst, studies hard, learns Persian, serves her country admirably, wins awards, and then defects to Iran. It generally doesn't happen this way. Generally, defections go the other way around. A Soviet would defect beyond the Iron Curtain. A Cuban, a Red Chinese. There are, of course, exceptions. Philby and other Cambridge spies skedaddled to Moscow when they knew their cover was blown. A few Americans hightailed it to Cuba, but not very many. This was very rare. Rarer still is somebody defecting to Iran. Some Iranians who lived in the West for a while returned to Iran. Maybe they had very old parents there, and they could live peacefully and look after them. For whatever reason, they might have a hard time bringing them to the United States. Others saw business opportunities a few times, a few years ago, and others were seized by religious conviction. They wanted to return to Iran and take part in the Islamic Revolution, which some did. Now, one was Monica Elfriede Witt. She was born in Texas, raised in Florida, and served competently in the United States Air Force, earned an advanced degree from a top university, George Washington University. Then she defected. She claimed to use her intelligence background, her knowledge of American tradecraft and personnel to support a higher purpose. Well, that purpose was serving the Islamic Republic of Iran. She was indicted by a federal grand jury for conspiracy to deliver national security information to the Iranian government. Prosecutors say Witt provided highly classified secrets to Iranian intelligence and helped target American operations, target anything she could after she defected to Iran. And just a few weeks ago, the United States Department of Justice offered a $200,000 bounty on her. So what on earth happened? Well, at first she didn't like it in the Air Force. Years after her service and speaking on Iran's press TV, Witt criticized, in her words, a boys' club atmosphere, unquote, and widespread sexual harassment that she claimed was systemic in the United States military. In June 2008, she left the Air Force, earned a degree from the University of Maryland. Now, with her security clearance and her bachelor's degree, she was very well positioned to work for national security contractors. This was a role she held for several years. From November 2008 to August 2010, she worked as a Middle Eastern desk officer in Virginia at a contractor there. She later worked for a nonprofit organization that connected Middle Eastern students to Fulbright scholarship. She enrolled at George Washington University and partially paid her tuition through an Iraq Fulbright scholarship. Now, I assume also that she earned money from her service in the United States military. That's applied. It often is. So you'd think she'd be happy with the situation, but she wasn't. In very choppy English, she published an article in GW's International Affairs Review that was very critical of the United States. She, like many other university students, was openly critical of the United States. And at first, her anti-American rhetoric was indistinguishable from that of other graduate students. There simply is a lot of anti-Americanism in universities, and in my view, very regrettably, in departments of Mideastern studies. Many Mideastern studies have been very hostile to American policies. I would argue, and I have argued and will continue to argue in podcasts, that much of this comes from money from Mideastern states that are not at all liberal and want to use their influence to change American policy and to change the mindset of American students. And regrettably, I think they're doing a very effective job at that. But anyway, the key here is that she began to show signs of disloyalty to the United States. And these signs were noticed, but they weren't reported. Something very similar happened with an American psychiatrist. You may have read the Major Nadal Hussain. He began to turn away from his country and embrace radical Islam. He was born and raised in Virginia. Well, at one point, he unleashed his fury on fellow American soldiers as they were preparing to deploy to Afghanistan. On a rampage at Fort Hood, he shot at anything that moved, killing 14 and wounded and crippling others. It's vital here to note that both Hassan and Witt were ostentatiously disdainful of America, and their fellow students were concerned. Some said, hey, wait a minute, but this woman was in the Air Force. She has a security. Isn't she working for a contractor? I mean, shouldn't she be a bit quiet? And Nadal Hassan also, his fellow soldiers were concerned, but they were also concerned about being tarred as a bigot and Islamophobic. If you're tarred as Islamophobic in universities, you could run into trouble. And if you're tarred in the military as Islamophobic, it can hurt your career, seriously derailing it. Well, referring to Monica Witt, a fellow student at Georgetown later recalled, there were warning signs in terms of go to authorities. One student recalled that everyone just sat and watched, unquote, as Witt expressed strong opposition to American foreign policy in class. Well, no one has seemed really pushed back with even a limited defense of America. So while some people were concerned, a few others said, yeah, this confirms what I thought and what we have been taught in these classes. According to some accounts, Witt was haunted by what she claimed were American war crimes in the Middle East. One classmate recalled that she had difficult sleeping and reconciling her participation in the war effort. Witt would mention drone strikes, extrajudicial killings, and atrocities against children. She claimed that her colleagues in the military would brag about it. She appeared distressed at what she called, quote, the gross incompetence, unquote, by her superiors. Well, her superiors were not competent enough to catch on to her, but maybe while she was working in the military, she was quiet about it, and she felt freed to express her opinions after she resigned her position and went into academia. I really don't know, but I tell you, I'm very dubious about the claims she made. The United States military has a very proud and clean record. Anyway, her journey towards becoming an agent for Iran government took a significant step in 2012 when she attended a highly publicized conference in Tehran. Since the 1979 revolution, the Iranian regime has arranged visits for intellectuals to speak at conferences, most of which are closely monitored by Iranian intelligence services. New Horizon, please remember that, an organization backed by Iranian intelligence, hosts events featuring anti-American, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, and far-left speakers. After returning to the United States from this 2012 conference, Witt began wearing a hijab and often discussed her conversion to Islam. Some people found her comments in Iran troubling, viewing them both as concerning and openly supportive of the regime and its ideology. She delivered a class presentation that alarmed some students for its sympathetic tone towards the Iranian government. Now, Nadal Hassan did the same thing. We have a series of podcasts on him. They're called Rampage. Just as Nidal Hassan gave a lot of clues, so did Witt. In fact, a fellow student recalled that Witt's paper, and I quoting him, sounded like a love letter to Iran, unquote. Well, FBI got wind of this and became concerned. Several agents approached Witt and expressed concerns that Iran's intelligence services may be trying to recruit her. And they were right. She met an American-Iranian spotter and recruiter for Iranian intelligence less than 7 months after the New Horizon conference, according to the indictment charging her with multiple felonies. The indictment identified a person known as Individual A, who approached her, built a relationship, and arranged her re-entry into Iran. Once there, Witt was provided with housing and computer equipment. Her defection was now complete, and Miss Witt, who had served 10 years as an Air Force intelligence specialist, was now under the operational control of Iranian security services. She disclosed a lot of classified information and made herself available to the Iranian government and their intelligence security services. Her information was used to create target packages. That is, all right, we have a target. What do we know? Where is he going to stay? What do we know about him? Friends, associates. That I did used to do that too. But I didn't do it on Americans. I'll tell you that. Monica Witt's espionage, the grand jury indictment. So, the grand jury indictment of Witt was unsealed during the week marking the 40th anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. In the same indictment, the grand jury charged 4 Iranian nationals with conspiracy, attempted computer intrusion, and aggravated identity theft. And what about Monica Witt today? I don't know. Has she been harmed in the spring 2026 U.S.-Israel attacks on Iran? She may have been. I mean, when they attacked the IRGC intelligence, might have been her, might have been her housing. I don't know. But it is significant. In 2026, the FBI announced a $200,000 reward for information leading to Witt's apprehension and prosecution. So, something to think about. $200,000. Yeah. Wish I knew where she was. Okay, let's go to the Eurovision update. We talked about that. I think it was a big deal in terms of information operations, soft warfare, however you want to call it. This is a good piece written by a young Israeli, Yael Bar Tur, and she works in public relations in the United States and in Israel, too. She goes there. I don't know much about her, but I think she made a few points, and I'm not going to go over the whole thing. But in the last one, we were really curious to know how Israel did so well in 2 successive Eurovision contests when there were protests and boycotts and crying and wailing and people just generally being very hostile to them. This is an interesting thing. Now, each participating country, and there are 25 of them this year, they submit an original song performed by a local singer or band. Now, the real show, according to Yael, begins when the voting starts, and countries, through panels of judges and fans, unleash their lethal arsenal of soft power on one another. Those were her words. I kind of like that. Okay, and unleash them they do. Scandinavian countries historically tend to vote for each other. The Balkan countries did too. Ukraine won a landslide in 2022, and this was largely because of international sympathy following Russia's invasions. And Russia was snubbed. They were thrown out. And other countries, too, have dropped out of the competition for a number of reasons. Now, Israelis knew that it was going to be hostile, and they prepared. So when they were rehearsing, you had people cursing them, mocking them, sounding off alarms to derail their performances. Well, they grew a lot stronger, if anything. Okay, but you scratch the glitter there and a brighter picture emerges among all the controversy. And despite some of the low points from the judges, the people voted very highly for Israel. Israel had been reeling in record numbers of audiences, and 2025, judges ranked Israel's entry 14th. But the audiences overwhelmingly picked it as their number one song, propelling it to number 2 overall. So more or less happened the same thing this year. Moved from 8th places from the judges to a 2nd place in a final tally. Anti-Israel critics claim that the public support was a result of a sophisticated campaign by those Zionists. But voters in Albania, Finland, and Portugal, I don't think they have very large Jewish communities there. And each of these countries awarded Israel the majority of their points. They just loved the song, Michelle. And also Iranians in the diaspora campaigned for Israel too. In fact, the song Michelle broke some records. So that gives us some insights. Thank you very much, Yael, for bringing this and putting it succinctly. And you certainly have a way with writing. I'd love to have you on the show. Okay, let's go to the animal kingdom. Let's return to it. We discussed some of these issues in earlier podcasts, and we discussed the hoax. Stop. And these were the pigs, the European pigs that were being walked by well-dressed, coiffured European women in Rome and Paris. These women were tired of predatory Muslim men giving them glances, maybe trying to touch them, so they had a pig because they know how Muslims despise pigs. Yeah. I think anybody who would believe that would believe just about anything. There's nothing to that at all. I mean, do you actually think that women, I don't know why a woman would walk a pig. Maybe they have an affectionate quality. I don't know. Maybe you can train them. Maybe they're tidier than their reputation. I think the whole thing's a prank. Might have been a woman just got one to, I don't know why a woman would get one, but I think they have a sense of humor. A woman wouldn't get a pig to keep away. What if the Muslims came by and kicked it? If they walked too close to a mall? I don't know, maybe a rabbi would kick it if it walked too close to a synagogue. Well, that's really all I want to deal with this pig thing. If you're interested in something, I am too, but enough of the swine. Okay, let's go to other animals in the Middle East. Now, these are tales that are put out by the Palestinian Authority. And we're going to go into the detail because not only are there Israeli super rats, by the way, we have a contest. In last week's Videocast, we announced it will be announced in July, the winners, for the best graphic image of the Israeli super rat. Now, according to the Palestinian Authority, these Israeli super rats are engineered in a university affiliated with Mossad, genetic engineering, and they're the size of a large cat. But more than that, they're very muscular. And they have very sharp teeth, very intelligent, that they only go after Arabs and not Jews. I don't know how they do this. They sniff it, they see it, what have you. They're pretty smart. Okay. And then they'll attack. Okay. But they also have a predilection for diabetics. In fact, they're so good at it. One woman who was sleeping on the ground who had diabetes noticed that most of her foot was gone. She didn't notice it. Yeah. So let's go into other. Now, these are given by the Palestinian Authority. They're not just on the street, the Arab street kind of tales. First, there are wild boars. In 2012, wild boars in the West Bank were released. They did this to trash Palestinian Arab crops and to terrorize villagers. They were, once again, they were very intelligent, trained to distinguish between Jews and Arabs, and targeted only Arabs. God, they're smart. For animals of lesser intelligence, such as donkeys, sheep, and cows, Israeli intelligence attached eavesdropping and recording devices and cameras to monitor farm life in Arab villages. The Palestinian Authority did not explain why Israelis have a continuing interest in Arab farm life, but maybe they think that there's some terrorist staging going on. I don't know. Anyway, there are also the hyenas that attack Palestinians in the Jordan Valley. And they were released in 2016 to terrorize and kill residents of Hebron. But these residents of Hebron cornered one and picked up stones and stoned the hyena to death. And let's not forget squirrels. These, like the donkeys and sheep and cows, had surveillance devices. Well, you can draw your own conclusion, but I'm pretty sure they're hoaxes. If you have a case to make, you can make them. Some animals can be and have been trained for combat. Yeah, we know that, okay? We had a podcast on the Israeli dogs that go in the tunnels, and they're very heroic, and they bond, as you could imagine, very, very tightly with their owners or controllers. And during World War II, the Soviets used bomb-carrying dogs to crawl under panzers and detonate themselves. Something very tragic there. The British have a Dick Award. That's what they call it. They give it to animals who have fallen in service, and they have stories. You can get it on the web. I'd read that because some of the stories are very moving. And I'm sure that the Israelis have used animals in war, of course, but designing super rats to distinguish between Arabs and Jews, kill the Arabs. Well, until somebody provides evidence, I'd say that these are hoaxes. Now, we are an education service, so I want to leave you with some things here. I see a few possibilities for term papers for Mrs. Witt. For national security students, consider comparing and contrasting the lives and motives of Monica Witt to the Cuban spy Ana Montez. There's something there. Also, there's even a better one. Compare Witt to Nadal Hassan. You could compare the motives, the religion, the response in the case of Witt to the university students, and Nadal Hassan to his fellow soldiers. They saw signs, but they didn't know what to do with them. There's a lot there, believe you me. And if you have an interest, just send me a copy of an outline, and I'll take a look at that outline for you. There's plenty of stuff there, and it would be a pleasure to do this for you. Okay, wrap up. This video does not represent the official position of the United States government. On behalf of Kensington Security Consulting, thanks for listening. It's been a pleasure. Out here.